Welcome back to Alley Chats. I'm your host, Rob Southgate. Alley Chats is like a virtual artist's alley featuring interviews with artists, filmmakers, podcasters, writers, and really any creative person you might find at a pop culture convention. My goal is to help draw attention to cool people and hopefully help them get some new fans. I want this podcast to raise up these amazing people and to inspire you, the listener, to chase your dreams as well. You can follow Alley Chats on Facebook under Alley Chats Podcast and join in the conversations. I'll add more social media in the future, but for now, that is the best place to interact with us. You can also email me directly if you would like to be a guest or have a guest suggestion. My email is rob@smgpods.com. Katie, welcome to Alley Chats. This is a show you don't even know what we do on this show, so this is going to be a lot of fun. Katie is an author who works with Horsemen Publishing, a company that we've talked about on here quite a bit because they're awesome. And we're going outside of our normal nerdy artist alley genre here, just a hair, because you absolutely would be somebody we'd find in an artist alley. But instead of doing sci-fi or horror, you do romance. Am I correct?
Yes, you are.
Oh, I can't wait to get into this. So let's start off with, Katie, why don't you tell people who you are, give a brief overview of what you do.
So I'm an expat Jamaican. I've lived in the States for 34, almost 35 years. I'm a former educator. I taught for 36 years. I ghost wrote lots of stories. And then I decided, you're writing romance for other people. How about you do that for yourself? And so I started publishing my own stuff, which I had been writing for years before I began to publish publicly. And it just took off. I'm not as prolific as some other new writers. I only have, 14, 15 books out since 2000 and I want to say 18. But I'm kind of proud of that because included among those are all the ghost-written stuff I did for many, many, many clients. Almost.
Yeah, we'll just say various clients at this point, right?
Yeah. I write romance because I think that love stories are the real human story, because that's where, if they're well written, you get to know people. You can't really know people, to me, as well in a war story or sci-fi. And I read all of those. The only thing I don't read is horror.
Okay. Okay.
So, but I don't find the same human connection in those others that I find in romance. And that's what I write. And I've been reading them since I was like 11 in high school. I write contemporary romance. I write Regency romance. I write paranormal romance. And I write usually about older adults because I'm an older adult.
Right.
I haven't been a 20-something in a very, very, very long time. And so that's what I write. Older adult circumstance.
You're supposed to write what you know, so that makes perfect sense. Although it does remind me, one of my favorite graphic novels, it was made into a movie. It's called Ghost World, and it's about two teenage girls, and it's fantastic. And every woman I know that's seen it is like, oh my God, they captured exactly what it is to be a teenage girl. Yet it was written by Dan Klaus, who at the time he wrote it was like a 40-year-old white dude who had a baby, and you're like, how did he tap into this? So maybe another life. I don't know. There's a paranormal romance for you. He's crossing the time streams to
there you go,
his inner child or his inner teenage girl. So okay, we got lots of things to talk about here. First, let's go back to expat Jamaican. So you grew up in Jamaica.
I grew up in the Caribbean. I was born in Jamaica.
Okay.
And then when I was 10, my family moved to Barbados, where we lived for almost 6 years. So I grew up in Barbados, sort of more. Then we went back home to Jamaica. And when I was 20, almost 27, we moved to Antigua after I got married, and my first child was a month old. We moved to Antigua, and I lived there for almost 4 years and had a second child. And then we came to the States. So yeah, that's me.
Wow. So that's so interesting. Growing up there, I mean, I mean, for most Americans, our experience with Barbados or Antigua or Jamaica in general is what we see from going on cruises or going and sitting on a beach. But growing up there is very different. Did you find, because you have lived in so many places and you live here, did you find with your kids, did you find it to be a similar experience, like for them, for you, or is it like, wow, these are two different worlds?
They are two very different worlds, very, very different. My sons, who are the Caribbean children, um, are very American in ways that I guess matter in America because they grew up here. When my older son came, he was 3, and my younger son was 1. So
Okay.
they grew up, and my daughters are both American. They were born in New York. So for them, growing up in a Jamaican household in New York is a weird kind of hybrid
Yeah.
situation. And for me, it's vastly, vastly different. And in fact, I went home to Jamaica last year for a funeral, and I hadn't been home in 30 years. And it was like culture shock.
Yeah. Oh, I bet 30 years. Holy cow.
Yeah. It was great to be home, and I miss a lot of it. But then I remembered while I was there all the things that were stressful for me when I was a child and a teenager. So, it's a weird space to be in.
Sure, sure. So yeah, I can imagine watching your girls grow up in New York, watching that and knowing your experience completely different. It's got to be really interesting to watch as a fly on the wall as well.
Yes.
Like
And
what?
the older one is a stage manager on Broadway. So she lives in Manhattan
Oh, wow.
with her husband. And it's fascinating to me to watch their lives unfold in a place I never could live in because Manhattan is too frenetic. I can't.
Yeah,
I
it's
live
not
in
your
the
scene.
country. Yeah, no, it's not.
I understand. Yeah, we actually my wife and I moved to, now this is not as big a move, but we lived in Minneapolis for 5 years. We live in Chicago area now, and that's where we grew up in the Chicagoland area. And even from that very tiny sliver, not even close to the move you went through, I can tell you there's a point where I felt like at about 5 years, you knew you were either from there and you were ready to stay, or you're not from there and you're ready to go home. And at 5 years, we came back to the Chicagoland area because we're like, yeah, it's just, even though it's not that far, it's 6 hours away. It's just different.
The
In
whole
your
of the
case,
world.
it's a world away, is what it feels
Yeah.
like.
Yes.
That's got to be a lot to unpack. It's got to be a lot to, like, when you're going through your memories, like you've got two different worlds you're dealing with. That's so cool. So interesting.
Yes.
Now, in your books, do you set anything in Jamaica? Do you touch back to that childhood?
In my own novels, my characters are either transplanted from Jamaica or Barbados, or their parents are. I haven't as yet set anything in Jamaica, and part of that was because I hadn't been home in 30 years until
Right.
last year, and I didn't want the stories to be about a Jamaica that no longer exists in a way.
Yeah.
So now I can begin to think about how I can put some stories there that Jamaicans will go, she hasn't been home.
Right.
I can do that now, but I haven't done
It
it
would be
before. But I have
interesting,
made
though,
sure.
to have a character that would be your age that has a flashback to your experience growing up and then show it now so that they understand, oh, she actually did experience
Absolutely.
both. That would be
And
really fascinating.
just to give you a little heads up about the sorts of things I do, in one of my most recent novels, actually the one from last year, I have a 12th Day of Christmas series, so it comes out on January 5th every year, which is the 12th day of Christmas. In that second book, the male MC is the son of, he's the first son of the United States. His father is Irish American. His
Oh.
mom is Jamaican.
Oh, interesting.
So it's stuff like that I do, just to mix it up a little.
Any truth in that? Your husband, Jamaican
My
or
husband is Jamaican. My husband
Jamaican?
is
Okay, I was
Jamaican.
going to say that would be a little close to home there. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, that is fascinating. You said I'm gonna go back to that right now. You said you put out one of these every year. I'm only noticing 3 books, back to
Yeah,
life,
I
back
only
to love,
started
back to
doing it.
last.
Yeah, I only do started. Oh, no. That's a different series.
Okay, there's another series.
There's another series
Okay.
that's not done by Four Horsemen. The Serendipity one that you're looking at, that was done by Four Horsemen.
Ah,
Yes, I only started working with them in 2021, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 2021. Or
okay.
yeah, maybe I think, don't make me lie, but I think it was 20.
Don't make you lie. I'm not making you lie.
It's just an expression. Um, yeah, I think it was 2021. And the first book in that series that you're looking at was a book that I published independently, and they came to a convention that I was at for the first time, and were telling us as writers who they were and what they wanted to accomplish, and that they wanted to expand their reach to include romance writers. And so I went to talk to them, and I told them I already have this book out that I'm planning to do a series on, but it's already published. Would you still be interested? And they said, can we have a look at what you've written? So that book is called Back to Life. That's the first one.
Okay.
So I showed them, and they were reading through it, and they said, you edited this by yourself? And I said, yeah, I'm an English teacher. I'll be an English teacher till I die, even though I'm retired. And they said, well, we'll republish it for you, absolutely, and then we'll take the rest of the series. And so that's how the Serendipity series came to be, Four Horsemen.
Interesting, because now that I went to your page on Amazon, I see all the books. I was just looking on the Four Horsemen page, so interesting, and I do see your Christmas collection in here,
Yes.
12th Day Christmas Romance. So who would you say, as a writer, are your biggest influences?
Goodness. I think I have to sort of go back to my history as a reader for that. So when I was younger and living in Barbados, I read everything that was in my school library, all the romances that were in my school library. So at the time, there was Barbara Cartland. I don't know if you've ever heard of her.
I'm not a big romance reader, so you're gonna stump me, but I know there's gonna be something you're gonna name. I'll be like, yes.
Okay. So
my
Barbara
aunt
Cartland
was a huge romance reader. She had bookshelves full of it. So I'm sure I encountered these, but yeah, you just name those names. There's going to be somebody out there that's going to go, oh my God, Barbara Cartland. So
yeah, but that also will age them if they remember Barbara Cartland. Barbara Cartland, Betty Neels, Georgette Heyer. So they wrote contemporary for the time romances. Georgette Heyer wrote Regency romances, which I loved when I was a kid, and I still do absolutely love those stories. And then there was Janet Daley, who was not English. She was American, and she wrote steamy for the time romances. And I read those. I devoured them. So
wait, did your parents know? Hold on a second, Katie.
I don't even know. I don't think they cared. I think they were just happy that I was reading.
Yeah, right. Just don't open the book. Don't see what she's reading.
They were much more interested in the fact that I was passing all my classes, so they didn't care.
Right.
And then, life happens. And then I came back to being more focused on romance, and I got into the paranormal stuff. And there's, she wrote the Black Dagger Brotherhood series, and I can never remember her name. J.R. Ward, there you go. Who her influence is not just for the paranormal, but it's also for how she pulls my reactions to the characters in her stories, the people who matter, even the villains. They make me grind my teeth and want to punch them, but that's how good she is. And then there's the lighthearted stuff by Lauren Blakely. I don't write rom-coms really, but she has a way of making her character, the banter between them is very, engaging. And then there's Olivia Gaines, who is my mentor, and before I knew her was one of my favorite authors, who writes really down-to-earth characters. She's not necessarily all about the billionaires. And if they're billionaires, you don't know, because that's not what's important in her stories. It's
Okay.
again the building of the character.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not one other or another of influences. It's things I pick from the writers whom I enjoy, that I try to emulate in my own work. People whom readers can relate to, people who have life issues. Not all the life issues are going to be big and dramatic, but they're going to be real. And
Yeah.
particularly for people my age, our age, our issues are different from people in their 20s and 30s.
Absolutely.
So, that's my influences, by looking at the people I love to read and seeing what I like there. And for me, building character is the most important thing. If my characters are well built, the story just runs. It goes. The plot is good if my characters are well built. So that's me.
Yeah. It's funny, as someone who's dabbled in screenwriting, and then my daughter is a writer, we talk about this character thing a lot, and I always find it interesting. When the characters talk to you and they tell you where you're going, because this used to happen to me. I didn't realize that's what was going on, but I'd be writing a script and I'm one of those right tear up, right tear up, right tear up. And I would have to get kind of in the zone until something said, here's the word, here's the thing. And then it would like propel me, and bam, it would be like flying out of me. And my daughter said, yeah, that's how it is. She's told me about that the characters talk to you. And it sounds like the characters talk to you too. And the more you flesh them out, the more they become real, the more the story is not you writing it, but them writing it.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes that makes the stories very long.
But that's why you have editors, or why you edit.
Yeah, and then I have to go back through and go, okay, now you have to be really disciplined and get rid of stuff.
Yeah, we always have to do that, don't we? So tell me, as an English teacher, what level did you teach at?
Oh, I taught all the way up to college. I was a high school teacher and a high school assistant principal in New York City public schools. I taught, again, in 3 countries. I taught in Jamaica, I taught in Antigua, and I taught in the States.
Wow. Wow.
But I also was an adjunct lecturer in the City University of New York system for more than a decade. So I taught college students. And then as a supervisor of English teachers, I had to teach them too. That was part of my job, was to,
Sure.
It's called professional development. But what I was doing was helping them not just with their teaching skills, but also with their knowledge of English, because I'm from Jamaica. I got my first degree at the University of the West Indies in English literature. And back then, I don't know about now, but back then, all I did, aside from the required university course every year, and linguistics and history of the Western world and something else, all I did was English. And our courses were year-long courses.
Wow.
So when I graduated with a bachelor's degree, I knew English upside down, inside out, in my sleep. Every English, African literature, West Indian literature, British literature of all the different genres, English theory, I was English. So when I was developing my teachers, I was also helping them with that, because the American system doesn't go into that kind of depth, not even in master's degrees. Do they go in? So when I was doing my master's degree at Lehman College, a lot of the stuff that they were finding new, I was like, damn, we did this already. Do I have to do this again? Yeah, I have to do it again.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm gonna explore this a little bit more, this English teacher part of it, because I'm a adjunct professor in business, and I know that I have my specialties that I teach, and certain things that even though they plug you into anything, there's certain things that I'm like, yeah, that's the thing. For you, was there a particular type of English class that you enjoyed the most, i.e., or e.g., I'm talking to an English professor here, got to use the correct one, e.g., I'll put notations at the end of everything too, just so you know, make you feel better about it. Is it things like more like the English history, language history? Was it use of verbiage? Was it the I do a deep dive on let's say African English literature? What was the thing that really lit you up?
It was the words.
The words. So you
It
really
was the
like the
words.
construction of the sentence and the
It was
words
well,
and
it was the words, but it was the words in the stories,
yeah,
which is why I also love history. Because if you
yeah.
think about it, history is just a lot of stories put together in a book.
Right.
When I was in high school, I used to just pick up my history textbook and read it. Just not
Yeah.
because I was studying. I mean, I do it for studying, but also because, especially if the history text was written in a less than dry sort of academic way, if it was written more like a narrative, I just sit there and read it. It was just fascinating to me. And the words, because every story is either helped or hindered by the writer's choice of words, which words they use, where they put them in a sentence, how long or how short the sentence is, what it tells you about the character, or what it tells you about the setting. Or words are so important. And
Yeah.
so it's just the words, however you use them. If I'm looking at them grammatically, I love grammar, by the way. so, so if you're looking
Wait,
at them
grammar nerd.
grammatically,
Hold on. Let's put an alert on this. We've got a grammar nerd.
yes. Um, I have a mug that says I'm silently correcting your grammar.
Oh, I'm sure you have. Just in my usage here on the show, I'm sure you've got notes. I'll get notes afterwards.
No, I am
Excuse
good.
me.
I am very good. I'm behaving myself. So yeah, for me, it's the words, how they're come together, how they're used. Powerful writers, among whom I'm going to name one more, Tal Bauer, who writes romances. He is brilliant. He is brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Use of
You
language and
should.
everything is where it's at for him.
He makes, not only are his stories sort of pulling at your heartstring kind of stories, he writes romantic suspense mostly, which I also love. But he makes his characters pull at your heartstrings. And the way he does that has entirely to do with how he uses words. That's why I love him so much. So yeah, it's the words for me.
It's the words. We got to it. We got to the root of everything here. The root word is word.
Words, absolutely.
That is fantastic. So, of the, and this is going to sound a little bit strange, but this show is as if we were in an artist's alley at a Comic-Con or at a pop culture con. So, some of the questions tend to be a little bit more pop culture-y. In modern, either cinema or TV, where do you say they get romance right? What are the romantic things that you see and you go, oh boy? And it doesn't have to be a romance thing. It doesn't have to be a Hallmark Channel. It could be like you're watching Yellowstone and two characters, they just write them correctly. Is there anything that sticks out to you?
Okay, well, first of all, you should know that I don't watch a lot of TV. I mean,
Perfect.
no, incorrect. I watch a lot of British shows.
Wow, I had my red marker out for that correction, but yeah, British shows. We watch a lot of British as well. So
I love Britcoms and I love British police procedurals and stuff like that. But when I do go to watch movies or anything, I don't do it a lot. But usually when I do, it's like Transformers because I love them. Optimus is my jam.
okay, that was unexpected. That's fantastic.
I fell in love with them when my sons were small with the Transformers, and I just kept loving them. I just went to see the last movie. But anyway, so for example, I like Law and Order SVU.
Okay.
I like it and I hate it. But okay. One of the things that I think they get right is the relationship, for example, between Olivia and Stabler. It isn't a romantic relationship, but it is very clear that their partnership is more than just professional.
Sure.
It's very clear that they have a personal relationship that's intimate in a non-sexual way.
Right. It reminds me of, you're saying this and you're talking about Anglophile. One of our favorites is Broadchurch, and the two characters in there. absolutely, there is a relationship there. It is non-sexual, but it's deep, and I love
It's
how that was written.
powerful. Absolutely. So for me, I get a lot of the way I try to evoke my characters from watching things that don't have anything to do with romance. Because I feel like it's in that Olivia Stable relationship that you get to see all the different ways in which a romantic relationship can be built, which include all the struggles, um, all the high points, all the low points, all the clashes,
Yeah.
all the making up. It's just, for me, so shows like those that show people in a relationship that continues and grows. Those are the things that sort of build the need I have to make my characters like them.
Yeah.
Even though my characters will have a sexual relationship at some point.
Right. Right. It's kind of like watching X-Files, the first few seasons. There's not just the will they, won't they, but that tension where
Yes.
if they had never gone to them, later on having a kid or whatever, you would have gone the whole time. Like, there is such a deep caring between these characters.
Yes.
And I remember watching the first episode and it drew me in, and I'm not one who usually looks for that. I'm just not. My wife was like, they're in love, and this whole show is about love. It's a romance show, and I'm like, no, it's an alien show because I like aliens. But I understand that. That is what makes it work.
Yes.
It's a hard. I'm struggling with the words here. Words again. But it is what the romance part of it, the part that you're talking about, is the part that makes us connect. It's connective tissue between us as humans to the story.
Absolutely. That's why I write romance.
Yeah, I understand. Well, and I think the perception of romance for the non-romance reader is Harlequins,
Yes.
flowing hair, and we're going to have, the baker, and now he's in love with what, okay. That's not from the people I've talked to that are romance writers. It's more like you. It's like, it's the core element. It's the story of that, but it doesn't always end in flowers and kissing.
No, and even if it does get back around to the HEA, because what sets a romance novel aside from all other novels is that there's a happy ever after, or at least a happy for now.
Yeah, happy for now. I think that's the thing that gets me. That's what I like.
There's
And
a happy for now.
I told
And
you I
even
don't
the
read
happy,
romance, but it's an essential element to what I'm reading.
It's important. Romance stories have evolved over time.
Yeah.
Now they tend to have more of a what we call realistic feel, because the characters are going through real world issues. So those things are not hidden behind the narrator's voice or behind closed doors. We're getting to see everything, to see real people struggling with real life issues. And sometimes those real life issues don't allow for them to get together in a marriage immediately. And if the writer isn't going to write a series, you as the reader have to assume that the happy for now will become a happy ever after at some point. You can make that up if you want.
Right.
Some writers do give the sequel in their series, and other writers are just like, this is a one-off, this is a story. Yeah. Trust that they will get to where you need them to go, because this is how I've set it up. But yeah, life happens, even in romance novels.
I think my favorite example, because I come from a world of I read a lot, but also a lot of TV and movies, the Before Sunset series. I'm sure you've seen that, right?
I think so.
Well, if you haven't, I'm going to highly recommend it, because it is the most romantic thing I've ever seen.
It's on TV?
No, there are 3 movies. Before
Hold
Sunrise.
Now you're going to make me write.
Yes, you need to see these.
Oh my goodness, sorry.
So it's a trilogy that was shot over decades. So the first movie is called Before Sunrise. And it's 2 characters by chance end up, I believe, on a train together. And the whole story takes place in one night of this romance. And it's like by the end of it, your heart is just aching and you just love these characters, but you are left not knowing what happens because they part ways and you're like,
Mhm.
is it happy for now? Will they get back together? And I remember after seeing it the first time, it's an indie film. We talked about it endlessly, right? Then I think it was a decade later or so, they did Before Sunset, which
Oh
is the
Lord, that sounds
characters meet
sad.
up like 10 years later and you
Oh.
see where they're at. And then Before Midnight is the third film. And it's another, decade later or so. Oh my gosh. You are going to love this, Katie. It is the most romantic, heartbreaking, lovely thing. And it's so cool because Richard Linklater is a phenomenal director and had great actors in it, but he would go back unexpectedly 10 years later, 15 years later. Here we are. Here's the next movie. And the
That
characters
sounds
are
like a great
aged
series.
in real time. Yeah. See, I got you. You're going to love it. You're going to love
Yes,
it.
listen, the titles have me.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's a beautiful series. Okay, I want to talk about your latest book. Back at Last is the third in the Serendipity series. Can you give us an overview? Tell us what the Serendipity series is. Tell us about Back at Last. No spoilers. I bet there's kissing in it somewhere. But what is
There's
the
what
Serendipity series? What is the crux of
okay.
that?
So if you remember right at the beginning, I told you that when I first met with Erica and Val, actually I met with Val. Uh, I had already published Back to Life, which is the first book in the series. And they agreed to take it from me and republish it and take the other two books. So in Back to Life, there is a scene where the characters in that novel are, well, one of them, the woman, is at a birthday party that's being hosted by her friend for a third woman who the friend works with. And at the time, it was just a one-off. And then I reread it and thought, you have two other stories in there, right?
Right.
Because at the party, a guy comes with he comes as Karen is the female character in that story. He comes as her plus one, hoping that he'll be able to get somewhere with her. You can have that spoiler. But then he meets Tony, who's hosting the party, and Tony's plus one is the one who takes home Chrissy, and Chrissy is the book in Back at Last.
Okay. Great.
So
This
Back
is
to
the kind of
Life.
story I love, though. I love when a nugget in one book leads to what else you read, and it just fleshes it out. I love that. Now you might actually get me on a romance novel because this is really intriguing me.
Well, Karen doesn't return Niles' interest, but that's okay because he meets Tony, and she sort of knocks him off his feet immediately, and their story is back to love.
Oh, I love it.
And then, as I said, Chrissy and Karen and Tony's date, whom she no longer is interested when Niles shows up, she asked him to take Chrissy home after the party. And so Back at Last is Chrissy and Rory's story. Now, Rory is a rock star.
Okay.
He is the lead singer and lead guitarist for a band called Third Generation. And they are called Third Generation because all the members of the band are thirds. He is Edmund Reardon Stewart III.
Nice.
And all the other people in the band are thirds. And that's why the band is called Third Generation. And all you need to know about the story is that Chrissy and Rory met in Karen's book one. And they were together for a while, but then she couldn't handle the issues with the fans. And so she ghosted him. And Back at Last starts 6 months later when they meet at Tony and Niles' wedding. So Tony and Niles are the one in book two, and they meet at his wedding. And that's when their story kicks off again.
Fantastic. Oh, I love it. What a great connective tissue between these stories. I think it's fantastic.
I tried.
And I'm sure there's more to come, but this is the latest one. It's called Back at Last. I almost said Back to
Yes.
Last. Back at Last. Back to life, back to love, back at last. See, I'm getting it. I'm getting it.
I'm proud of you.
It's KT Bond. I will put links in the show notes so you can order these and check them out. I think that people listening, even if you're not necessarily a romance fan, it's worth exploring this because it sounds fantastic. And who knows? You may be able to admit that, okay, well, I do like a little romance in what I'm reading here. And there's no Fabio on the cover with the hair and the big.
No, there's no Fabio. I love my covers. Those covers
I do too.
My cover artist is brilliant. He's brilliant.
The London one we're Anglophiles in my house. So you want to hear about Anglophile. You talked about the thirds. Here's a big exclusive, I guess. My real name is George Robert Southgate VII.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm in a band called Seventh Heaven. And no, I'm kidding.
That would be so cool. Now you're giving me ideas. Thank you, Rob.
Well, if you do it, you make sure I know about that.
I promise I will let you know.
Oh, that's so, but yeah. I'm telling you, I'm going to put everything in the show notes. I'm also going to put links to connect with Katie. Katie, you were so fun to talk to. I definitely am going to want to have you back on at some point on one of my shows. Where can people interact with you? Where can they find you on social media?
The easiest place to go is to Facebook, author KT Bond.
Great.
That's where you'll find me.
Right. And if they write to you, you respond. And
if they write to me, I respond. And also, as I told you, I have a link tree. It's linktr.ee/KDJB. If you go there, you'll find all the places where I am. But Facebook is where I mostly interact. So that's where you'll find me quickest.
Wonderful. And I'll put that in the show notes as well, the link tree, so that people can find you and interact and buy these as gifts and buy them for themselves. And you can also go right to Four Horsemen Publications and buy it on that website, which I'll put in the show notes as well. Katie, this was wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on. I had a lovely time. I can't wait to talk to you again.
Me either. This was fun.
You can connect with me on social media or via email. All the links are found in the show notes. Oh, and it would really help me if you would rate and review this show on whatever platform you use to listen to this podcast. Good reviews help others find the show, which ultimately helps these incredible guests get more exposure. Alley Chats is a production of Southgate Media Group, hosted, produced, and edited by me, Rob Southgate. Thanks again for listening to Alley Chats. And don't forget to support